What are your initial impressions of Mark? Do you think this is somebody we can trust?
Whenever I talk to socialists, I always try to remind them that in order to spend money, you have to make it first.
Danielle Smith holds nothing back when talking about how she really feels about Mark Carney and the Liberal government right now. That government, by the way, which seemingly has gone so off the rails, it is much more of a disaster than I initially thought it would be. We're going to talk all about that. And you know me, I do love a very good fact check. If only mainstream media had that same type of reporting, perhaps our country wouldn't be in this mess. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Subscribe, follow, like, share this video. Comment your thoughts down below as well. And there's some weird things going on with Drake, the rapper, the celebrity, the singer, and Jugmeat Singh that also makes you question some of the previous media headlines about Jagmeet Singh's safety and security. Lots of different stuff to get into today. We may be bouncing around a little bit. All that and more coming up today on Over Opinionated. A couple days ago, we received all these media headlines, right? Talking about how Jagmeet Singh had been issued special protection after there was an agent from India who had been surveilling him. To the point as well, we learned this in the 2025 federal election, that police had notified Jagmeet Singh about a credible threat to his life, or a risk to his life, in late 2023. And they had initially at that point put security around him and his homes, but none of the details of that have been released. There's no further updates other than what we heard just a couple days ago, that Jagmeet Singh was under security protection again due to threats from the India government, if somebody working for them. Now, obviously, we don't know the entirety. We don't know the details of what that security protection entails. We don't know how serious those threats are. The Canadian media certainly made it sound rather serious. You would assume that he was like literally at a stay home order based on how they were all talking about it. But then Jagmeet Singh, like 2 days after that news story broke, and he was just hanging out at a Kendrick Lamar show on the floor, where I don't see anybody that's security protection around him personally in this photo. I obviously wasn't at that concert, but this has started trending online recently, and I don't follow Drake, so I don't know if this is actually real. I'm going to assume that it is because it looks like it. But I guess that Jagmeet Singh, like Drake had followed him a few years ago. And so on October 7th of 2019, Jagmeet Singh says, "Honored, thanks for the follow, brother." And he mentioned Drake in a couple of stories that he posted on Instagram. And then Drake says, 12:47 a.m., you're a goof. And Drake posted that. He took a screenshot of that and posted it. Now, we don't know the dates of this. I mean, how Instagram usually works is if there's a prolonged period of time. So Drake's comment saying, "you're a goof," normally that there would be a date that would say, 2025. So for all we know, this actually just happened in 2020, and that was at the end of their conversation, and Drake, for whatever reason, chose to post about it. I would presume that's likely due to the beef that Kendrick Lamar and Drake have, of which I know far more than I would like to admit about, because I did, in fact, work for a top 40 radio station for a good chunk of my career.
Because I think it reflects the way this government is running things. This Modi backlash that is happening within the Liberal caucus, if they had discussed this issue ahead of time with the caucus, they would have been able to mitigate so much of the backlash that has happened. The same thing with C5, the Natural Resources Bill. If they had talked to caucus about it before and not briefed them an hour before they tabled it, some of the backlash would not have happened. Or the stakeholders on the border bill. They don't seem to value caucus as a sounding board, and I think this is going to cause more and more problems if they don't realize it soon.
And what I really want to do by bringing him up here is to highlight the hypocrisy, the selective outrage of the far left, the radical left. And those people, I would argue, the NDP under Jagmeet Singh's leadership, as well as the Liberal Party for the last decade plus, has been in that category of neoliberal, low-key socialist, Marxist. Everything that they do and they say leads me to that opinion, and I'll get into that a little bit more as well. But what we do know about Jagmeet Singh when it comes to his relations with India, it's that he was denied a visa to enter India in December of 2013, which barred him from the country. And this was because of his association with Khalistani T words that I'm not allowed to say. And there's video footage of him meeting with high up ranking officials of that group. There's photo evidence of them meeting together as well. And I covered this at length in a past video. So feel free to go find that. I'm not going to retell the whole story here, but the Canadian media has literally not mentioned that at all. And so in terms of Jugmeat Singh, it's incredibly dishonest, disingenuous, and misleading reporting, because the way that you would hear that story would be that India is coming after Jagmeet Singh for absolutely no reason. Well, there is in fact a reason that's very valid, very concerning, and a reason that Canadian officials have let run wild in our streets. And I'm just sitting here patiently waiting, because I remember quite vividly the Liberals losing their minds over Pierre Polyv not getting his security clearance. Mark Carney himself even said that it was irresponsible for that to happen, because apparently having that level of security clearance that Justin Trudeau introduced just before 2020 is imperative to really protecting our country.
I live here. You are born here. I'm born here. You're a fascist.
You know, you think about stories like Jugmeat Singh, you think about that clip we just played, you think about the fact that Justin Trudeau had accused Modi, the Prime Minister of India, of actively participating in some really bad stuff in Canada. And then you think about how, and those people, by the way, Justin Trudeau, Mark Carney, they got their security clearance, right? And then you think about how Anita Anand, who under Justin Trudeau backed him by saying that Modi was a threat to our sovereignty, that he had done these terrible things, and now is defending Mark Carney, inviting Modi to the G7.
Sorry, returning to Narendra Modi, you mentioned the commercial relationship between Canada and India. Does this say that Canada is putting commercial priorities above national security?
Not at all. Not one bit. There is an RCMP investigation that is ongoing. There is a legal process that is independent of the Government of Canada, full stop. And we will always respect the rule of law, and we will always respect the legal process that is occurring in our country.
Please refer back to the previously shown clips in today's episode. And, you know, it's weird because the Liberals and Liberal supporters have also just, it's crickets. I don't actually hear anything at all after their own public safety minister appointed by Mark Carney. In fact, Mark Carney did indeed defend him as well in a press conference, had to recuse himself from several files, briefing documents, because of ties to an actual terrorist group, the Tamil Tigers, which is also known as the LTTE and is globally recognized as a terrorist organization. I don't hear anybody saying that or, you know, adhering to the rule of law. Like, let me just understand this fully. Pierre Polyv was vilified and dragged through the mud by all the mainstream media, by the entire Liberal Party, by all the Liberal supporters who know nothing and have never read past the 4th page on Google before, over not having his security clearance. Yet, Pierre Polyv has had no breaches, as far as I can tell and see and find. If there is one that I'm missing, let me know. He's never been charged. He's never been compromised. The only thing he did was refuse to play Mark Carney and Justin Trudeau's games, and he was called dangerous. But then you have a Liberal cabinet minister with documented ties to banned terrorist organizations, and there's barely any headlines. They get buried as soon as they get posted. There's absolutely no outrage. There's no calls for him to step down. There's no demand for answers. And this is the man, our Minister of Public Safety. That seems like the biggest red flag, the biggest immediate "you're not qualified to do this job" on top of the way that you speak that I've ever heard in my life. So let's just get one thing incredibly clear, shall we? This has never been, it is not, and it will never be under this government about security. It is solely about silencing opposition. And as per that Palestine interaction that we saw with that man who was screaming with his face covered, of course, because he's so very strong and intimidating, screaming about "you're a fascist." Well, let's just go in again to how little the far left radicals actually know and how easily manipulated and molded they are to just do as they are told, because fascism is typically, traditionally, I should say, a far-right authoritarian political ideology. But what do you do when the far left starts to emulate it? Well, the definition changes now, doesn't it? Because the far left can get away with it because they're far left, right? I'm a good person because I'm a liberal, and I'm a liberal because I'm a good person. So all of this is good. It's the best thing ever for you.
The largest vote share for the Liberal Party in half a century. Our largest women's caucus ever. And because it's the Liberal Party, it's the largest women's caucus ever. And we're not stopping. Our largest BC caucus ever. Le plus grand caucus québécois des 45 dernières années. Caucus with representation in every province and the North. A government is now committed to action to build an even better, a fairer, a more sustainable Canada.
Let's go through some examples of fascism, and I want you to think about Canadian Conservatives and whether or not they check any of these boxes. I want you to think about the Liberal government and whether or not they check any of these boxes as well. Fascism, couple key traits of it. One would be the strong centralized power and dictatorship, where it's concentrated in one leader or one elite group. Dissenting institutions are undermined. Okay, so let's see Carney's Liberals. An unelected rise to power. Yes, I'm aware we don't elect prime ministers in Canada, but Carney was parachuted through party manipulation, media manipulation, and a technocratic power grab. What about his cabinet? Have you taken a look at the elite establishments those people are involved in? We have François-Philippe Champagne, who is going to a Bilderberg meeting. He's been stacking his team, Mark Carney has, with WEF-linked bureaucrats, ex-bankers, corporate loyalists, climate change zealots, and activists who have been absolutely sucking your bank account dry on nothing that works. It simply enriches them, rather than some of the other elected MPs, the smaller scale people. No, he did not go with them. He stuck with the same old who were all aligned with him.
Liberals' oil and gas cap will cut production by about 5% and $21 billion from Canada's economy. If the minister agrees we're in a national economic crisis, does the U.S. have a federal oil and gas cap?
Mr. Speaker, I don't think any of us are interested in being like the United States.
That's right.
Remember.
Does Iraq, Saudi Arabia, does Libya, does Iran?
Mr. Speaker, we've been through half the world at this point. My answer will remain the same. I'm focused on Canada.
Remember.
Liberals can keep laughing, but the point is that they're saying they want to build Canada, but their anti-development policies make Canada, our workers, and our businesses unable to compete globally. So actually, they're not going to help build Canada at all. So what will the minister say to the families of the more than 50,000 people who will lose their jobs because of their only one in the world Canadian oil and gas cap?
What about bypassing Parliament? Does that sound to you like a strong, centralized power dictatorship? Because they've used Governor General warrants, they've used cabinet orders and emergency powers to avoid the democratic process. This is something Justin Trudeau did, and it's also a precedent that Mark Carney is already setting for himself. You can watch past videos if you want more details on that. Fascism also uses the silencing of political opponents, controlling dissenting voices, and criminalizing criticism. Let's think about that. The province I live in, as an example, there was a man arrested about 4 weeks ago now due to posts he made on X over allegedly being anti-Muslim and anti-LGBTQ. Arrested, by the way. We have Bill C-63, which was diminished when Parliament was prorogued, but they are bringing it back. They've made that incredibly clear. And Bill C-63, known as the Online Harms Act, it gives the government power to preemptively punish people for what they might do or say, right? And it is a very clear chilling effect on your freedom of speech. You could also factor in some intelligence abuse there, right? Look at how much they use Pierre Polyev's security clearance as a talking point in order to create this doubt, suspicion, and insanity around him. And it's not because he actually posed a risk, clearly, or he wouldn't be in government, but to isolate him from getting access to key information that he should be able to access, and then to be able to smear him for not signing up for what is essentially a gag order. That sounds very political, doesn't it? We also have media control. That's a given. Justin Trudeau handed over millions, billions of dollars to the CBC and other organizations. They brought in Bill C-11 as well, which then, again, if you were a government chosen entity, you could receive a payout after they tried to isolate you from the news. Mark Carney signed over $170+ million through a Governor General warrant, by the way, to give even more money to the CBC, which again silences independent voices and boosts pro-government narratives.
Speaker, baseless smears like that are why these liberals can't be trusted to regulate speech in this country. For years, this liberal government has determined to censor what Canadians see and say online. From Bill C-11, which put the liberals in control of YouTube algorithms, to Bill C-18, which squeezed out small and independent media, and to their thought crime Bill C-63. Now we learn in the National Post that cabinet ministers over there are all clamoring over who gets to be responsible for the latest online censorship law. So will the minister who gets to censor what Canadians say please reveal themselves now?
The Honourable Minister.
Even Google agreed that they should do this. Google will pay $100 million to help Canadian journalism in this country. An international US-based company would agree to do that, but the Conservative Party of Canada would vote against this, would prevent that from happening, would want to prevent our media from getting $100 million so that there's more local content, more journalists hired in our newsroom across the country. It is simply unthinkable. It is immoral, Mr. Speaker.
Let's clarify a couple of things there, Mr. Guilbeault. Google didn't agree to do this because they thought it was a great idea. Guilbeault knows that. Everybody on the Liberal team knows that. They were forced with the decision of either we limit the entire country's access to news and media and turn the country into North Korea, or we pay $100 million so that we don't help destroy this country that we hope votes out this nonsense and this insane, crazy government. And also all of the claims there about how much it's helping newsrooms, unbelievably false. Unbelievably false. And I know that for a fact because guess what? I worked in media when this was passed. I know what people were saying about it behind the scenes. I know that everybody hated it. I know that local stations had their social media accounts blocked, had their entire revenues diminished from other platforms, and they had to, at that point, bend the knee to what the government wanted in order to survive. Fascism also includes the belief in national, racial, cultural superiority where enemies are framed as internal threats. Donald Trump, anybody? There's some protests going on about him right now, actually. And Carney's liberals, they have a moral elitism, certainly. Not only did they also push a Canadian nationalism, that's pretty convenient, isn't it? Following the Donald Trump tariff situation, but they also push moral superiority, where Canadians have this unearned, undeserved sense of pride because of the globalist climate virtue and, oh, we're DEI compliant. And if anybody is against it, you're called an extremist, a denier, a racist. In fact, the Liberal government has used some pretty darn fascist ways to get their way, have they not? You know, if you're a trucker, if you're an oil worker, if you're a free speech advocate, if you're somebody talking about politics on YouTube, not only are they going to use the algorithm of which they control against you, thanks to Bill C-11, C-18, and the future C-63, but they also frame you as a threat to national unity, a threat to safety. Look at the way they talk about Danielle Smith. Look at the way they talk about the trucker protests. And you don't hear the same things about other protests that are far more destructive and have nothing to do with Canada or our people now, do you? And another form of fascism is when they use military and police to enforce ideology. That story I just shared with you about the individual from my hometown who got arrested over his post could be a good example of that. We also had the Emergencies Act, which was deemed unconstitutional afterwards with no no consequences, of course, to be used against peaceful protesters, to freeze their bank accounts, to use mounted police and horses on people who were protesting the government and how hard they were being on everybody. We have expanded surveillance. By the way, CSIS has even more tools to monitor your domestic accounts than ever before, especially political activists and online critics. We also have the newly proposed Bill C3 and C2, where they can go through your mail without any warrant, where they can demand that they get your data from social media companies without you even knowing anything. They don't need any cause to do it, by the way. It is a very vaguely written thing. And you know what? I bet you anything Stephen Guilbeault is going to respond to the Conservatives striking that one down the same way that he did about that question there with Andrew Lawton. Dominating public discourse and rewriting history are also ways that fascism will serve the regime. Dare I say, every child matters. Why on earth is it that the government stopped funding the search? I don't know. I really don't know. And of course, we have school indoctrination in that as well. Very much promotes progressive ideology, climate fear, identity politics, the entire shebang, while rejecting traditional values. Then we also have the corporate state fusion. Yes. Businesses aren't always nationalized, but boy, do they ever serve the regime's goals under a fascist government. Look at Brookfield as an example, the conflicts of interest, modular housing, climate policies, the green investments, Brookfield. Mark Carney also benefits personally from carbon credits. By the way, he's the baby daddy of those. Read his book, Values. I have twice. It's terrifying. And of course, we have crony capitalism, right? You have all of the massive taxpayer-funded subsidies that go to corporate partners, but only if they agree with DEI mandates, digital policies, and of course, climate goals. Yes. You can't get anything in this country unless you agree with the regime. Let that sink in, everybody.
I'm not convinced that Mark Carney has had a metamorphosis in his political leanings. He's talking like a conservative in many ways, a small c conservative. He's talking about affordable housing. He's talking about an accord, getting provinces together. He's talking about having something that works for all of Canada, but it's very vague. It's very vague. What are your initial impressions of Mark? Do you think this is somebody we can trust?
Whenever I talk to socialists, I always try to remind them that in order to spend money, you have to make it first. And this is the real conundrum that Canada has been in the last 10 years, is that they have consistently suppressed all of the wealth generating activities, investment generating activities, and tax generating activities to pay for their aspirations. The socialists have no problem coming up with big, expensive national programs, but if you want to pay for those, you need a vibrant economy. This was something that the Labour government in New Zealand understood, is that you have to have a red tape free environment in order to foster business investment and growth, in order to generate the revenues to pay for the service.
That is all for me today. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, especially the latter half. I got a little fired up there, didn't I? We are going to be talking about that kind of stuff a lot more in the days to come. I can assure you of that, because your girl over here, I'm getting a little feisty. I'm losing some patience, I think, when it comes to all of this, because it is just so obvious. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Subscribe, follow, please. That does help the channel grow so very much, just as much as liking the video, commenting, and sharing it does. And I will talk to you tomorrow.